I stepped out of the cab that evening, the hem of my dress brushing against the gravel driveway like a whisper I couldn't quite catch. The house, our family home actually, the one I'd grown up in before Mom and Dad passed it down to Sarah, glowed under strings of fairy lights, laughter spilling out from the open windows like champagne foam. It was her engagement party, Sarah's big night, and at 28, I was the older sister who'd flown in from the city just to be there for her. We'd always been close, or at least that's what I told myself. Sarah, 2 years younger, with her effortless charm and that laugh that could disarm a room. Me, Emily, the one who planned everything, who made sure the details were perfect. I'd even helped pick out the invitations, suggesting the gold embossing because it matched her ring. The air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden Mom had planted years ago, and as I walked up the path, I smoothed down my dress, a simple emerald silk thing I'd splurged on, thinking it would make me feel less like the outsider I'd become since moving away. Guests mingled on the lawn, clinking glasses, their voices a low hum that made my chest tighten just a bit. I spotted Sarah almost immediately, radiant in white lace, her fiancé Mark at her side, his arm looped possessively around her waist. He was a good guy, or so she'd said in our late-night calls, successful in tech, the kind who remembered birthdays and brought flowers unprompted. I waved, and she caught my eye, her smile flashing bright before she turned back to a cluster of friends. Inside, the party was in full swing. The living room had been transformed, tables laden with hors d'oeuvres, a bar in the corner where a bartender mixed cocktails with practiced flair. I grabbed a glass of white wine, something light, to ease the nerves, and scanned the room for familiar faces. Aunt Lydia was there, chatting with cousins I hadn't seen since the funeral 3 years back. Everyone seemed so at ease, so woven into this tapestry of celebration. I felt a pang, wondering when I'd started feeling like a guest in my own history. Sarah found me near the fireplace, pulling me into a hug that smelled of her signature perfume, vanilla and something sharper, like citrus rind. "Emmy, you made it. God, you look amazing. That dress. It's perfect." Her words were warm, but her eyes flicked down, lingering just a second too long on the fabric. I brushed it off. Parties always made her a little manic, flitting from person to person like a butterfly. We talked for a bit, about my job in marketing, how the city's grind was wearing me down, and her excitement for the wedding. Mark joined us, shaking my hand with that firm grip of his. "Emily, right? Sarah's told me so much. You're the brains behind half her best ideas." I laughed, feeling a flush of pride. Guilty. But tonight's all her. We clinked glasses, and for a moment, it felt right, like old times, when we'd sneak into the kitchen at midnight for ice cream and share secrets under the covers. But as Mark excused himself to greet more guests, Sarah's expression shifted, just a hair. Her smile stayed, but her eyes narrowed, scanning the room. "You know, Emmy, this is kind of a private thing. Close friends and family only." Her voice was light, almost teasing, but there was an edge to it, like a knife wrapped in silk. I blinked, confused. "I am family. And you invited me, remember? The save the date you texted last month." She waved a hand, dismissing it with a giggle that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh sure, but things change. It's just intimate, you know? Not everyone fits." The words hung there, odd and out of place, like a wrong note in a familiar song. Before I could respond, she was off, pulled into another conversation, leaving me standing with my wine glass cooling in my hand. I mingled as best I could, chatting with old neighbors who asked about my life with polite curiosity. But that comment nagged at me, a splinter under the skin. Why say that? I pushed it down, telling myself it was stress, the pressure of the night getting to her. The party swelled, music pulsing softly from speakers hidden in the corners, and I found myself near the bar again, refilling my glass. That's when it happened. Sarah was across the room, surrounded by her friends, women I'd met once or twice, all glossy hair and designer dresses. They were laughing about something, heads thrown back, and then her eyes locked on mine. She broke away, striding toward me with purpose, her own glass of red wine tilted precariously. "Emily," she said, loud enough for heads to turn, This is a private event. You need to leave now. Her voice cut through the chatter, sharp and commanding. Before I could process, she flung the contents of her glass at me, deep crimson splashing across my chest, soaking the emerald silk, dripping down like blood from a wound. Gasps rippled through the room, followed by laughter, nervous at first, then fuller, as if it was some inside joke I wasn't in on. Guests stared, some covering their mouths, others outright chuckling. Mark stood frozen a few feet away, his face paling, but he didn't move. Sarah stepped back, her expression a mix of triumph and feigned surprise. Oops. Well, now you really should go. Wouldn't want to ruin the vibe. I stood there, wine trickling cold down my skin, the stain blooming like a bruise. My heart pounded, humiliation burning in my throat. Why? The question screamed in my head, but I couldn't voice it. Not with everyone watching, their amusement like needles. I turned, forcing my legs to move, grabbing my coat from the hall and slipping out the door into the night. The cab ride home was a blur, the driver's sympathetic glance in the rearview mirror only making it worse. Back in my hotel room, I peeled off the ruined dress, letting it pool on the floor. That's when I noticed it. A small envelope tucked into the pocket, one I'd forgotten about from earlier. I'd found it in the mailbox at the old house when I arrived, addressed to me in Sarah's handwriting. Curiosity had made me pocket it without opening. Now, with trembling hands, I tore it open. Inside was a single photo, me and Mark, from years ago, laughing at a college party. On the back, in her script, "Some secrets are better left buried. Stay away." My breath caught. Mark. That photo was from before Sarah even knew him. I'd introduced them. But the way she'd written it, the implication twisted in my gut. It couldn't be. Yet there it was, a crack in the door I couldn't close. What had she meant? And why humiliate me like that if it was just an old picture? The realization hit quiet and cold. This wasn't random. Something deeper, something I'd missed, was rotting beneath our sisterly bond. I couldn't unsee it now, the whisper turning to a roar in the silence of the room. The hotel room was too quiet after the photo, so I turned on the TV just to have another human voice in the air. Some late-night host cracking jokes I didn't hear. I sat on the edge of the bed in one of those scratchy white robes, the ruined dress still crumpled in the trash can like evidence. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, cousins asking if I was okay, a few laughing emojis from people I barely knew, one message from Sarah that just said, "Dramatic much?" with an eye-roll gif. I left it on read. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I felt the cold splash of red wine again, heard the ripple of laughter that followed. Around 3 in the morning I opened my laptop and started digging, the way you do when you're too angry to feel ashamed. First stop, Sarah's Instagram stories from the last 6 months. I'd liked most of them at the time. Brunch pics, ring selfies, her and Mark kissing under cherry blossoms. But now I scrolled slower, looking for cracks. There. A throwback post from last Christmas. Mark's arm around me, not her. Caption: "Missing my favorite girl." She'd cropped me out of the version she reposted 2 weeks later, but the original was still there if you knew where to look. My stomach turned. Another one, a blurry shot from a bar, time-stamped the night before she announced the engagement. Mark in the background, looking over someone's shoulder straight at me while I laughed at something on my phone. Sarah wasn't even in the frame. I closed the laptop, heart punching against my ribs. I needed air. I threw on jeans and an old hoodie and drove back to the house, our parents' house, using the spare key I still had taped under the mailbox like we were teenagers sneaking in again. The place was dark, fairy lights unplugged, empty wine glasses scattered like casualties. I moved through the rooms on autopilot, the way you do when a place remembers you better than people do. In the kitchen I found Sarah's planner open on the counter. She'd always been analog about dates, mocking me for living in Google Calendar. I flipped to last month. My name was there, crossed out in thick black ink on the weekend I was supposed to visit. Below it, in her neat cursive, "Tell E about the move, then ghost." Another page, 2 weeks later. If she shows up anyway, make it hurt. She'll leave faster. I stared at the words until they blurred. Make it hurt. That was the plan. Not a drunk slip. Not a bad night. A plan. Upstairs, her childhood bedroom was now the guest suite she bragged about on Pinterest. I opened the closet looking for nothing and everything. On the top shelf, behind a stack of old photo albums, my fingers brushed something hard. A wooden box I recognized, our mom's jewelry box, the one we'd fought over after the funeral. Sarah had one, of course. She always did. Inside weren't Mom's pearls. There were letters. Dozens of them, tied with the same pale blue ribbon she used for wedding mood boards. The envelopes were addressed to Mark in my handwriting. My actual handwriting. I pulled one out, hands shaking so hard the paper rattled. Mark. I know this is insane, but I can't pretend anymore. That night in Chicago, when Sarah was away for the conference, I keep replaying it. I've never felt that seen by anyone. I'm scared because I think I'm falling for my little sister's boyfriend and I hate myself for it. If you feel even a fraction of what I do, meet me at the lake house next weekend. If not, I'll disappear. I swear. I didn't remember writing it. Because I never did. The next letter was worse, explicit, desperate, cruel in its longing. Then another. And another. A whole fabricated affair spanning 2 years, complete with details only someone who'd watched us both for decades could invent. Hotel receipts photocopied and slipped between pages. A sonogram I'd never seen, dated for a pregnancy that never happened, with a sticky note in Sarah's writing, backup plan if he wavers. My knees gave out. I sat on the carpet, surrounded by the lie she'd built brick by sick brick. She hadn't just wanted me gone tonight. She'd wanted me erased, turned into the jealous, home-wrecking sister everyone would believe was capable of anything. And Mark. God, had he known? Had he read these and said nothing while I smiled at him across the room? I took photos of everything with my phone, hands trembling so hard the flash kept going off. Then I slipped one of the letters into my pocket, the worst one, the one that would make a person's skin crawl, and closed the box exactly as I'd found it. Downstairs, I poured myself a glass of water from the tap and stood at the sink, staring out at the dark backyard where we used to chase fireflies. The silence pressed in, thick and waiting. I could feel it now, the hum beneath the floorboards, the truth stretching awake. Sarah thought she'd won tonight. She thought the wine and the laughter had sent me running for good. She had no idea I'd just found the map to every dark corner she tried to hide. I set the glass down without drinking and walked out, locking the door behind me. The night smelled like jasmine again, but underneath it was something metallic, like the storm hadn't decided whether to break yet. It was coming. And when it did, she'd be the one standing soaked in red. The letter burned a hole in my pocket all the next day, that forged confession of an affair I never had. I couldn't stop turning it over in my mind, the careful loops of my handwriting she'd mimicked, the details she'd twisted from our shared past. But one thing stuck out like a thorn, the Chicago reference. We'd all been there together 2 years back for a family reunion, but Sarah had bailed early for that conference. Or so she'd said. I pulled up my old emails on my phone, scrolling until I found the itinerary. No conference. Just a vague work thing she'd mentioned in passing. It was a loose thread, but I tugged. I drove to Mark's office that afternoon, downtown, in one of those glass towers that reflected the city like a mirror. He'd mentioned the address once, bragging about the view. I parked across the street and waited, sipping coffee that tasted like ash. Around 5, he emerged, loosening his tie, heading for the subway. I followed at a distance, heart slamming like it might crack a rib. He stopped at a cafe 2 blocks down, the kind with outdoor seating and overpriced lattes. And there she was, Sarah, sliding into the chair opposite him, her laugh carrying on the breeze. They leaned in close, too close for just wedding talk. Her hand on his knee under the table. A kiss that lingered. I snapped photos from behind a parked car, zoom lens on my phone capturing every damning frame. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed her to see me seeing her. I waited until they parted, him heading one way, her the other, then fell into step behind her, my footsteps echoing hers on the sidewalk. Sarah. My voice came out steadier than I felt, cutting through the street noise like a blade. She spun, her face paling under the makeup. Emily. What the hell, are you stalking me now? Her tone was indignant, but her eyes darted, searching for an escape. I pulled the letter from my pocket, holding it up like a warrant. This. You wrote this. Forged my name on a pack of lies to make me look like the villain. Why? Because you knew about Chicago? Or because you invented it to keep him? She snatched for it, but I stepped back. People hurried past us, oblivious, the city pulsing around our little standoff. You don't know what you're talking about, she hissed, her voice dropping low. Mark and I, we're solid. You're just jealous, like always. The older sister who couldn't hold on to anything. The words stung, dredging up old fights, her stealing my friends in high school, my clothes, my spot in Mom's affections. But this time, I didn't flinch. Jealous? Of what? A relationship built on fakes. I found the box, Sarah. The letters, the receipts, even that fake sonogram. You were going to trap him if he strayed. But he already has, hasn't he? With you playing both sides. Her face twisted, the mask cracking. She glanced around, then grabbed my arm, pulling me into an alley off the main drag. Fine. You want the truth? Mark was mine first. No, wait, he was yours, but you blew it. That college party. He kissed me that night, not you. But you introduced us, so I let you think it was innocent. Then Chicago happened for real, him and me, while you moped in the hotel. I saw the way he looked at you after, like maybe he'd made a mistake. So yeah, I wrote those letters. Showed him just enough to make him think you were obsessed. Problem solved. I laughed then, a bitter sound that echoed off the brick walls. Problem created, you mean? You humiliated me at your own party to push me out for good. Threw wine like I was trash. But here's the thing, I have proof now. Photos of you two today. And this. I waved the letter. One email to his family, to yours, and it's over. The wedding, the lies, all of it. She lunged, nails digging into my wrist as she tried to rip it away. We struggled, her breath hot on my face, whispers turning to shouts. You wouldn't. You're too nice, too spineless. Always have been. But her voice cracked, fear bleeding through the venom. I twisted free, shoving her back just enough to create space. Spineless. Maybe once. But you crossed a line, Sarah. You didn't just betray me, you tried to rewrite me. I pulled out my phone, fingers flying over the screen. Attached the photos, the scanned letter, addressed to Mark, to Aunt Lydia, to everyone who'd laughed that night. One tap, and they all know. She froze, eyes wide. Please, Emmy. Don't. I'll call off the party drama. Say it was a joke gone wrong. We can fix this. Sisters, right? The word hung there, hollow. I hit send. Her phone buzzed in her purse. Copies to her, too. She fumbled it out, face crumpling as she scrolled. You bitch, she whispered, but there was no fire left. Just defeat, slumping against the wall. I stepped back, the alley feeling wider now. Goodbye, Sarah. Enjoy the privacy you wanted so bad. I walked away without looking back, the city swallowing me whole. By evening, the calls started. Mark, furious and heartbroken, confirming he'd seen the affair letters she'd planted. He apologized, said he'd ended it. Aunt Lydia offered the house back, said Sarah could fend for herself. Small victories, but they warmed the cold spot in my chest. Back in my apartment days later, I poured a glass of white wine, not red, and sat by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. It was over, the storm passed, leaving me standing where she'd fallen. If you're watching this, hit that like button if you've ever had to reclaim your story from someone who tried to steal it. Subscribe for more. Because sometimes, the best revenge is just the truth, blooming quiet in the aftermath. And in that quiet, I found my roots again, deeper than before, memory turning from a wound to a place I could finally stand tall.